Vikings Saints. Going through what y'all need to do to make some money on this bitch. So, to the pace real quick, we got the Vikings 7 point underdogs on the road in New Orleans, and they over under set at 50.5. I'm going to be pretty strong on the over 50.5 here, and I actually think the Vikings +7 is bettable. I do still think the Saints are going to win the game, so their money line is whatever. I don't think it's good value, but I would pick them to win. But yeah, stick around. I'll tell you how and why this how would go down. So first, we got the Vikings offense, Saints defense. Injury wise, Kyle Rudolph, Alexander Madison out for the Vikings. Don't care. And defensively, Marcus Williams, starting free safety on the Saints, out. That is a big deal. His replacement, PJ Washington, one of the worst corners in the league. Not quite actually as bad as safety, to be honest. He wasn't even that bad in the Chiefs game. He wasn't really the reason that they got fucked up in the end. But still not good. And Trey Hendrickson and Malcolm Brown, two rotational defensive linemen, questionable. So first, talk about the run game for the Vikings offense. And honestly, it's not going to be that bad. I mean, Vikings have pretty high floors of rushing offense generally anyway. And when you look at the advantages here, right? So the Saints definitely have an advantage at the line of scrimmage. David Onyemata, Sheldon Rankins are going to be controlling the interior most of the time, but they're not like super destructive guys, nor are they all in on being able to get in the backfield real great. And that's kind of what you need against the Vikings. That's what stops them because when you have two fat guys that don't get to the edges too well, then the Vikings are just going to run around them generally. On the edges, Cam Jordan, definitely a big deal. Really good edge run defender. He's a large part of the reason I still pick the Saints to win this game. Just as a run defender, he really helps on the edge. And their other side isn't too bad either. Whether it's Trey Hendrickson or Marcus Davenport, both of them have size. They both play run decently. Hendrickson better than Davenport for sure in that respect. But they're not awful is the point, regardless of who's out there. So the second level, though, Saints linebackers, I mean, Demario Davis is good for sure, but he's not crazy. He's not like a top five linebacker or anything like that. He's not going to single-handedly shut down a run game, especially sideline to sideline at his age. And their other linebackers are kind of Quan Alexander is super exploitable against run schemes like this. He gets upfield way too much. He mispositions himself a lot. He's really going to be a problem. Now he'll make some plays in this game for sure. You'll see him fly up and make a tackle behind the line of scrimmage. At times in this game certainly, but he's also on replay going to be the cause of a bunch of big chunk gains for the Vikings. And their third linebacker, whoever it is, Alex Anzalone or Zach Bond, who they play there, not impressive at all. Not awful, but yeah, that just kind of gives you a overall run game that's going to be pretty decent for the Vikings. And as far as the pass game goes, there is pass rush for sure. David Onyemata can get a little bit. The Vikings interior is still super weak, pretty bad in pass protection. Better with Ezra Cleveland. And Garrett Bradbury's not awful, but he's still, like I said, really weak. And you're going to see some stuff from there. On the edges, though, I mean, Cam Jordan's good for sure, but you've seen this year. He's not a crazy, like, elite pass rusher at this point. Though still pretty good. And while he's going to be an issue, he's not going to be enough by himself. And on the other edge, I mean, Trey Hendrickson's whatever. I know he has a bunch of sacks. They're all mostly effort sacks, slash kind of, lucky's not the right word. Like, I don't think he's bad. He's not like the way I look at like Hassan Reddick, where it's like real random and don't bank on that guy providing pass rush. Like Trey Hendrickson, he's all right for sure, but he's not special. In fact, whatever the three sacks that he got almost like back to back against the Bucks early in the game or early in the year were almost exclusively because of David Onyemata playing against a backup tackle forced to play guard, and Tom Brady being immobile in the pocket. Like, there's a lot of stuff that benefited Trey Hendrickson. The point is, there's pass rush in this game, but it's actually nothing like crazy. The receivers, I mean, listen, Marshawn Lattimore, I do respect. I think he's okay, but and even Janoris Jenkins I actually think is pretty decent too most of the time. But the Vikings receivers are crazy good. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, and they're going to be open in this game, like because they're both past the level of receiver where no matter who they're against, they're going to be open. And that's the case here, certainly. Now, are they limited a little bit because their corners aren't awful? Yeah, but it's nothing crazy. Irv Smith in the slot at tight end, he is good, really good as a tight end. Although I do think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the Saints slot corner kind of box safety guy, third DB, can handle him okay. That's the type of player he's good against is bigger bodied receivers and or tight ends. So it's more of a neutral matchup. Now, Irv Smith's still going to be useful in this game, but just a thing to point out. So Yeah, then you get to the quarterback. Kirk Cousins, I mean, listen, there's enough pressure in here to make it so that Kirk Cousins ain't going to like go off. But there's not enough to make him look awful. And his receivers being open enough, combined with the way they run their like offensive scheme, is enough to provide him with a floor of moving the ball pretty reasonably well. So yeah, I have their overall pass game decent, and I have them at 23 to 30 points. Um, Here, I mean, I think I'd be surprised if they don't get there. Yeah, the Saints secondary is just not good enough to handle the receivers. And like I mentioned earlier, I should have with a backup free safety who's not very good, and their other safety would be Malcolm Jenkins, who's awful in coverage. There's a lot of paths to success for them throwing the ball and running the ball too. They're going to be just fine. Like they're going to have problems at the line of scrimmage for sure. But anytime they bust past that, you're talking about Dalvin Cook in space versus old ass Malcolm Jenkins. There's absolutely ways for them to score points. Saints offense wise, injuries. Both starting guards. So Nick Easton out, starting guard, and Andres Pete was questionable. Their other starting guard. I think he's going to play at this point, but we'll see. And on the Vikings defense, there's some real issues there. Jalen Holmes, starting defensive end, good run defender, out, and they're down to like their 4th through 6th string linebackers, or not quite actually. Eric Wilson's still in, but yeah, Troy Dye, Eric Kendricks out, and Todd Davis doubtful. 3 starting / rotation linebackers in the Vikings. So you're looking at Eric Wilson, Ryan Connolly, and Hardy Nickerson. That's not good. So yeah, run game first. Saints offensive line is going to be pretty much dominant in this game. Vikings have the worst interior defensive line in the league by far, and while the Saints interior I'm not crazy about, they're more than good enough here to consistently control the line of scrimmage. And at tackle, the Saints tackles are fantastic, especially Ryan Ramczyk, including as run blockers. And while normally the Vikings defensive ends can defend the edge or defend the run on the edge, okay, without Jalen Holmes, I mean, and even with him here, the Saints tackles are just too good. So about a ton of advantage of the line of scrimmage, and then the Vikings linebackers at this point, like I've said, pretty awful. Eric Wilson's mediocre at best, and they're not good enough here to really matter, and they're going to get washed out a lot. They're going to get touched a lot by the Saints offensive line. It's bad. The Saints run game is going to be really good. Pass game wise, there's no pass rush. Vikings pass rush is terrible. It's terrible here. And everybody literally beat 0 pressures from the outside across this entire game. Now that's not as much of a boost to Saints offense as it is to other quarterbacks, because Drew Brees just even in situations with no pass rush, he generally throws the ball too quick for that to be the case anyway, which you'll see here. But I mean, it doesn't hurt, right? And as far as their receivers go, I mean, listen, the Vikings play 2 good corners, or pretty good. Jeff Gladney and Cam Dantzler are both legit, and they will be legit for a long time. The issue you run in here, right, is that the Saints receiver is good enough, especially Emmanuel Sanders, to get open short, combined with no pass rush over time. There's just enough there to provide options in the short to intermediate, which is, with Drew Brees, that's exactly what you want. They're not going to be killers, especially the non-Emmanuel Sanders guy. I mean, the corners are better than them, but not by nearly enough to force issues on the Saints. So, yeah, and then with Drew Brees, it's kind of stuff I mentioned. Without pass rush, that's not a super booster to him, but it definitely doesn't hurt. And you give Drew Brees time with receivers who are going to get open eventually, and that just leads to a lot of success. Now, once they get in the red zone too, I mean, they can rush the ball so well, that just creates a huge floor for that. Drew Brees is good in the red zone. Alvin Kamara helps. Emmanuel Sanders helps. There's a lot of options there. So I have them at 28 to 35 points. Only thing that would keep that lower is if they run the ball too much in the second half, right, and have gigantic long drives, which is absolutely possible for sure. But even if they do, I mean, you're still talking about drives that end in touchdowns pretty consistently. And so that's why I definitely think the over is a strong play, because both of the teams have tons and tons of ways to score the ball, as opposed to not much limiting them. Vikings a little more so, hence me picking the Saints to win the game. But yeah, Vikings +7 I also think is pretty decent. And yeah, so Vikings Saints over 50.5, definitely strong, and Vikings +7 bettable.